Let's talk about OnlyFans because in this current capitalistic hellhole, it seems like we all need to have an OnlyFans to survive. But okay, in all seriousness, sex work, OnlyFans, what's the deal with all of that? Is it empowerment or is it exploitation? Let's talk about that. Warning, listening to us
might radicalize you.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Unholy Feminists with me, Kath, and Gail. Hi Gail.
Hi, Kat. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm good. I'm great. I'm off work this week, so yeah. That I feel like that alone is a plus. So I'm good.
And happy birthday again.
Thank you. Flirty 30s.
Flirty, 30, and thriving.
Yes.
How are you feeling?
The same. I was just about to say. So someone asked me, how does it feel to be 30? I do not feel different. I feel like after 29, I had like a long time to think about 30. And I used to panic when I think about 30 because like, oh my God, I'm 30 years. And then I start thinking of all the things I thought I would have achieved by 30. And I feel like I'm not there yet. So I was really panicking, but I had a whole year to think on it. And it feels like life is now starting for me. And I'm so happy about that because now I've experienced so much. And I also know what works for me and what doesn't work for me. I can take the trash out and like be my own like person sort of because I've gained enough to know better. So yeah, life is amazing on the third floor. And if you're watching this and you're scared about turning 30, you should not be. It's amazing. Okay, your life is just starting.
Yeah, I'm glad you feel that way. And I do agree. I turned 30 last year. And I feel like it's like entering my 20s again, except this time with adult money and more confidence as well, because I feel like a lot of people, society in general, places a lot of importance on being in your 20s, right? People say that when you're in your 20s, you're at your prime. Women, you're at your prime. If you're hitting 30s, you're too old. You should be invisible. You should... all those things that really try to put women down when they're hitting 30s. But when you're actually at that point, I feel like I had never been more confident turning 30. I'd never felt so good in my own skin. I had never felt so stable. It was like I finally had my feet on the ground, you know? So it wasn't all that bad. It was actually better than I expected.
Yeah, same. And I mean now I have enough. I know enough to know whether I still want to create a Fit Finder account and get some money.
Yeah, because I mean Bonnie Blue, right? She's earning millions and we're what, toiling away?
Right. I mean I love what we do, how we help people and all that. But it's not quick money. Capitalism.
Have you seen that documentary about Bonnie Blue and her 1,000 men? Something.
I've actually not watched it. I've seen bits of it, but I've not watched the full thing. Have you watched the full documentary?
I have. There was even one scene where there were discarded condoms everywhere after that whole 1,000 men thing. Just used condoms, and then she just lied on the condoms and making a condom angel, I guess. And I was like, "Ew, sure." But I think the most embarrassing part of that documentary was not what Bonnie Blue was doing, but the men who lined up and waited for hours, right? To have sex for a few minutes with a woman that they didn't even know.
And some of these people were married men. some have kids at home.
Yep.
Some were engaged to be married. Some had like serious girlfriends they were in committed relationship with. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's always the sex worker, it's always the woman who bears the brunt of all that, and never the men. Because like, ew, how weird of you. Don't you get any pee? Like, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. Which is why I thought about the topic today, because partly because of that, but partly because if you go into the subreddit r/feminism, I've sent you tons of stuff about that. There is this undertone of swerve in there, of sex work exclusionary radical feminism in there, where a lot of people were saying that sex workers were part of the problem in society, or shaming sex work in general. And I want to talk about that because I think sex work is an important part of feminism. It's kind of like how some feminists, they exclude trans people in their activism. Some feminists exclude sex workers in their feminism. And I do want to talk about that, about whether that's valid, how harmful it is, about purity culture a little bit, and about sex working in general.
Yeah.
So, before we get into that, let's get into the definition of sex work a little bit. According to the Human Rights Campaign, sex work is the exchange of sexual services for money or something of value. So think things like erotic dancing, adult film actors, BDSM workers, etc. Individuals engage in sex work for a variety of reasons, which could be choices, circumstances, or coercion. Now, what kind of debates have you heard about sex work in general, especially among SWERFs, Gail?
I think for me, one of the things is that it's degrading to women, and so it cannot be a feminist issue. Basically, I think that's one of the most predominant arguments that I hear a lot. And I remember I was on TikTok the last time, and then people were having this whole conversation, and I think we spoke about it before, where you made a point that, you know, if we decide to think of sex work that way, as an exploitative venture, then every work we do is exploitative. I mean, your 9 to 5 job, I'm sure how much they are paying you, and whoever is getting like the highest profits of it, when if you know the figures, if you see the figures, you realize that you are being exploited. I mean, capitalism is exploiting all of us basically at the end of the day. So at the core of it, what is your real issue if it's not about you attaching your moral values to it? If it's not about purity culture, if it's not about your moral values, how do you sit on your high horse where you are being exploited to sit behind a computer, to first of all wake up as early as 4-5 a.m. for some people in my part of the world, because you need to beat traffic. You can't afford to rent in the central parts of Accra, for instance, because that will be way over your budget. And so you live about 2 hours away from where your job is, and you sit in traffic for about 2 to 3 hours to get to your job, work 8 hours, sit in a bus, a public bus again for 3 hours, and at the end of the month you are probably paying about $300. That's if you are lucky. You are also being exploited. But then someone also came to say, well, it's not the same as a woman who is on her knees, you know, doing mouth favors for old men. And why is it that whenever we think of sex work, we just think of women as sex work, as if women are the only people who can be sex work? It's I don't know, the language they use is very exclusive, first of all, and it also does not make it seem as if sex workers have agency. So that's one of the most common arguments that I usually hear, that it's exploitative and it's degrading. And if you're a woman who engages in sex work, you are taking women's rights back, which I don't believe. But yeah, what about you?
I feel like one of the arguments that I've heard from other feminists about sex work is that you are allowing men access to your body in exchange for money, in exchange for anything of monetary value, and allowing men access to your body like that is allowing them to objectify you, is allowing them to use you or sexualize you. Where I feel like that is coming from a purity culture point of view, because if you think of women's value as attaching to our vulva, of our genitals, or our sexuality, rather than us as an entire person, then it feels a little bit like you're projecting purity culture, like saying that, oh, if you allow men to touch you or to have sex with you in a certain way, then you're losing your value as a woman.
Yeah.
Similarly to how people say that, oh, if you lose your virginity, then you're no longer having the same value because you've lost that part of you. It's in the same line as how some women, some feminists say that if you have sex with a man, if you have heterosexual sex, including P and V sex, then you are part of patriarchy, then you are bowing down to patriarchy because you are allowing a man to have command over you by literally being on top of you, but also by having that kind of control over your body. And I kind of feel like that's going a little bit, they're attaching the moral value to that, by saying that, oh, sex is something to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
That when you have sex, you are relinquishing control, you are relinquishing a part of yourself, that you are degrading yourself by having sex with a man. And it's even more degrading, according to them, when you're having sex for money. Whereas, like you were saying, capitalism is exploitative. If you are working in a blue collar job, for example, if you are working in manual labor, then you are also using your body in exchange for monetary value.
Yeah.
If you, for example, work as a construction worker, then you are in a way renting your body, renting your labor to your boss, to the company, so that they can use your labor in exchange for money, right? So how is that different from sex workers, where they are also manual labor? It's also manual labor for them. It's also a part of their body. It's just that it's their genitals, it's their mouth, it's other parts of their bodies that people are sexualizing, but they're also doing it in exchange for monetary value. How is that different?
I think so. This particular argument is a very like slippery slope, because what's the difference between their this whole definition, or this whole reason of hating sex workers, and relationships as we see them in this day and age, where women want to be, fully dependent, fully financially dependent on a man, and in exchange they'll be a housewife, and they are giving their bodies to these men. Like, basically they're giving their bodies and their time to these men in exchange for their finances. So what's the, if we are going to go that route, then what's really the difference? Is it because they say I love you? Is that what makes it? I do not, first of all, I think it's a moot point that um you know if you are giving your body to someone and in exchange for money or whatever, we are all doing it one way or the other. We are all doing it. It's just people who are against it think that they have a moral high ground, because, well, I'm not really like taking money, or I'm not advertising myself as a sex worker, so as long as I'm not doing that, I'm better than this person. You are not, babe. you are not.
I think in their mind, the difference between being married and what you were talking about, they think that if we refer to it like that, or one, they would think that we're saying that marriage or relationships are transactional. But in a way, I think that relationships are
Ah,
transactional to a
transactional.
certain point.
Yes.
Yeah, because even if you say that you're with this person because of their love, that is transactional. It
Mm,
might not be monetary transaction, but you are giving someone your love, your affection in exchange for their love and affection, right?
mm.
That is to me transactional. And I think in the example that you gave of how women, for example, would be in a relationship, being a stay-at-home wife, bearing children, all of that in exchange for financial security, for them, I believe that the difference is that one, the woman has a ring on her finger, and two, there's commitment. And they think that that elevates
Them.
them above the status of sex workers.
Well, as long as they're happy. As long as they're happy. Because I really do see the current relationships in the media and everywhere. The representation is extremely transactional. So when I see like all these talks bashing, sex work from that angle, I'm like, this is moot because everyone,
Yeah,
almost everyone is
because if you
doing that
think about
now.
it, Because if you think about it, you are saying that I'll be there for you if you'll be there for me too. Because if you are not expecting the same energy in return, it's a very toxic relationship because you keep giving and giving and giving, and your partner is not giving back to you. You kind of have the expectation that your partner is gonna match your energy, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. And
Yeah.
sort of imagine coming back to purity culture. I think one of the things that really gets to me is the framing around, when they're talking about sex work, is the way they say things. It makes it seem as if the woman or the sex worker does not have a say in what they are doing. And also, a lot of times, it has it has weird undertones. It has judgy undertones. It's like, I'm judging you that you're having sex undertones. I'm judging you that you're having so much sex. I'm judging you that you are providing pleasure to people in exchange for money while I'm probably doing it for free. I mean, are you jealous that you can sell your body? Maybe you are. I don't think you are, but I'm just saying, maybe, maybe. So I feel like a lot of their arguments are based on purity culture, honestly. That is just based on purity culture
Yeah.
and the idea that, sex is something that should always be initiated by men. Sex is something that benefits men. That sex is something that women give to men. It's not something that we really savor. It's not something we do for our own pleasure. It's not something that we sit down and decide, yeah, it's my choice. I want to have sex. I want to have this much sex. However, I want to make money from this much sex. And also, sex work is not even just limited to, um, sex. I mean, from your definition, you also mentioned, there's erotic dancing. There are
Mm-hmm.
OnlyFans models who do not engage in sexual activities with other people. Some are purely based on, enacting people's kinks, people's fetishes. There's this website, Feet Finder, where you just post your feet and then people pay for you to show them your feet doing all sorts of things. So it's broad. However, a lot of SWERFs have limited it to, the fucking part. And that is when the purity culture and their whole morality value comes from, where they sit on their high horse and feel like, yeah, I'm a better person because, you know what, I've slept with 5 people. However, I did not take money from them. I slept with them for free. Well, your loss.
So I do see a lot of women, a lot of pygmies actually over here in Cambodia. They condemn sex work by saying things like if the husband is cheating on them with a sex worker, they would express their disgust, saying things like, "Oh, why would you want to involve yourself with someone that's like a public toilet?" They have used that word, like calling sex workers a public toilet, or saying that, "Oh, aren't you disgusted by them because they've been touched by so many men, they've been used by so many men." So it's definitely purity culture, and from a moral perspective, saying that I am better than you because I've been touched by fewer men than you, or
Yeah.
I've only been touched by one man. So it is from that perspective, which leads us to the next point. Do you think that sex work is exploitation or empowerment?
I feel like this is something, even though I've done a lot of research on sex work and how, it intersects with feminism, I feel like this is something I'm personally still sort of processing, especially the empowerment aspect of it. So I'm sure you remember the last time when we were having a conversation, and I think I asked that, is as a feminist, is everything you do a feminist choice or a feminist decision? And
Mhm.
I feel like I've sort of been trying to relate it to sex work, that I don't know. I'm trying to find my words. So you know how sex work sort of started, because, like, I mean, men started the whole idea of sex work, basically. So yeah, some of the arguments that SWERFs use is that it's because it was started by men, and so it can never be something that we as feminists or we as women can reclaim for ourselves. It's always going to be, soiled that way. However, I do
Mhm.
think it's exploitation, and it can be empowerment for some people, but I'm so struggling with the empowerment aspect of it. Is it financial empowerment? Is it, because at the end of the day, if you're having sex with like a lot of men, men are, I mean, like, we know what men are. Do you get it? So the fact that you
Mhm.
have to deal with like men in that regard every single day of your life, I cannot sit here and say I understand how it can be empowering for a sex worker. But I also do acknowledge that it might be empowering for some people. I'm not a sex worker. I cannot speak for sex workers. So this is how I feel about that particular question. But I do think it can definitely be exploitative, especially when it is criminalized, and in places where women are coerced, women are trafficked. It definitely, that's just exploiting them because they do not have a choice in it. They cannot consent to, sex working, so they are just being exploited. What about you?
I think that sex work is the industry. It's sketchy. It's usually, oftentimes, very exploitative. But I think the question is a little bit nuanced because you can hate the industry, you can think that the industry is exploitative
Yeah.
without having to reduce the people who
Mm.
work in that industry. For example, if you look at the adult entertainment industry,
Mm.
if you go to see interviews by female adult entertainers, you will see that they felt exploited a lot of times. They earn a lot less than their male counterparts. For example, Mia Khalifa has talked about how little she earned, even though she is one of the most known adult entertainers out there,
Mm.
but she has earned so little money compared to her male counterpart. Um, like you said, there's a lot of aspects that make the sex work industry sketchy. Things like human trafficking, things like child abuse. Because I, okay, if you're interested in learning more about the sex work industry, I would highly recommend watching the documentary Horse Glory. It was done, it was made in 2011. But basically, in the documentary, the filmmaker, the producer, they went to Thailand, to Bangladesh, and to Mexico, and they interviewed and they documented the lives of sex workers from those places. And if you look at it from that perspective, it's very different from the glamorous life that you see a lot of people on OnlyFans, like OnlyFans models. It's very different from that. Some of them are children, some of them are teenagers, and yeah, in some cases they earn very little money. They earn like $10, even less than $10, just to have sex with their clients. It can be very exploitative in that context. But I mean, in terms of empowerment, the more that I think about this, the more that I don't feel like sex work is empowerment. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It doesn't mean that it's something degrading. But in terms of empowerment, I don't think it's like that. I think it's just a job. For me, sex work is just a job. Just
Yeah.
like how if you work in any industry, is it empowerment? It's a job, right?
Yeah.
And we are forced to work these jobs because we're living under capitalism. So we need to do whatever we can in order to like exchange our labor, exchange whatever we can in order to make a living, right? So I feel like it's not empowerment per se, it's a job.
Yeah.
It's a job that needs protection. It's a job that needs a lot of regulations, a lot of policies in order to make sure that we're not being exploited, in order to make sure that sex workers get a fair living wage. But at the end of the day, it's a job, and I think that's about it.
I've not thought about it like that before, and yes, that definitely puts it into perspective. Why are people so hung up on the fact that it's not empowering when it's just a job? So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And I think it's also a way for women to be financially independent. So does that mean that anything that we do that provides us financial independence, does that mean that it's empowerment? It doesn't always mean that, you know. Empowerment itself is about the freedom, right? About the
Yeah.
agency. But the job itself, it doesn't have to be an empowering job. And it's kind of like it's giving, you know how back when hustle culture wasn't debunked yet,
Yeah.
a lot of people would say, oh, you need to dream big, you need to want to become the president or whatever. But then we have come into an age where it's okay to dream small. It's okay to just want a normal casual life where you are able to do what you want. You are able to be with friends. You're not just toiling away.
Yeah.
It's okay if your dream is just like that. It doesn't have to be a huge ambitious dream. Just like a job is a job. It doesn't have to be a job that empowers you, a job that changes the world. It can be just a job.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I perfectly agree.
The next point is about white feminism, about how people would say that, okay, sex work is empowerment, going the other way from how some feminists say that sex work is degrading, sex work is exploitative, to the other perspective, the other spectrum where they say that, oh, sex work or OnlyFans is very empowering, it's feminism, it's empowering. I want to talk about how it ignores the context of sex work in lower income countries. What do you think of that perspective?
I think, but I can say white feminism is sort of synonymous to choice feminism, right? Like
To what, sorry?
like white feminism sort of goes hand in hand with choice feminism, right?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. White feminism is basically, it's not intersectional. It's basically white. Think Taylor Swift, right? They think
Okay.
that feminism is.
Yeah.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah, I
All
got
right.
it. I got it. Yeah, so I I personally feel like white feminism does not usually speak for people in lower income countries. It speaks at them, because you do not know the live reality, you do not know the live experiences of people there. And I'm sorry, a lot of white feminists are also not even coming to stoop. I don't know if it's the right phrase to use, but they'll probably feel as if they are stooping low if they even have to go to any of these countries to research, or even just find someone from there to speak to. They are not going to do that. That's why it tends to ignore that the economic and labor realities of low income countries are totally different from theirs, where, I mean, ideally you have more of a choice as a white woman than the woman in Congo, than the woman in Sudan. They do not have that many choices to choose from, to say, oh, instead of doing sexual favors so that I can feed myself, so that I can feed my family, I will go pick up a laptop and get a remote job. They do not have that luxury.
Yeah, exactly. For a lot of sex workers in low income countries, they don't have a choice. It's they need to do that in order to make a living, in order to
Yeah.
survive. It's That's why I was thinking that it's not really necessarily something that's empowering. It's a job. It's how we make a living. It's how we survive. It's how we put food on the table. And which goes into my next point, which is about how that kind of narrative, it harms sex workers, because if we condemn sex workers, we are not really finding the root cause of why women become sex workers in the first place, right? We're just saying that, oh, they're bad. And in turn, that isolates them even more. That pushes them to the fringe of society even more, which in a sense it would create this like black market culture, because if something is not talked about, if something is condemned, if something is viewed as being degrading, as bad, then they would go into the dark, right?
Yeah.
And when sex workers are not getting the protection, are not having any regulations to protect them, to provide them safety and all of that, they would be exploited even more. Human trafficking would be done even more, because we're not protecting them. We're not saying that we care about these people. You know how, for example, serial killers, they tend to target women or people who are not missed by their family, who are not missed by
Yeah.
society. So people like sex workers, because they know that sex workers would not be missed by people. Sex workers would not be looked at by people as being like good and moral people in society.
Yeah.
So people wouldn't care about sex workers, which makes them more vulnerable to things like that. So I think that's the harm that is caused by that kind of narrative of saying that sex work is bad and condemning sex workers.
So I saw something somewhere and was like, it's about time, when we think about sex work, we move away from the moral panic to a labor panic. So what are we doing about their rights? What are we doing about labor rights? The moral panic should have ended in the 1900s or whatever. We should have left it there. So I always say, I'm sorry, but sex work abolitionists are not being realistic, because this sex work is something that has existed since the beginning of man. It's not suddenly going to stop existing. However, as a feminist issue, how do we make it safe for these women? How do we make it safe for this marginalized group, so that they can, keep doing this but in safe environments? And I think one thing is decriminalizing, which you already mentioned. Because if we decriminalize now, they have rights, and decriminalizing for both clients and workers, so that it can be well regulated from both ends, so that when a client is attacking a sex worker, they know that, oh, I could probably get into serious trouble for this thing that I'm doing. They get away with so much people get away with treating sex workers so badly because they know, like he said, that no one will pay attention. A lot of the crime shows I watch, sometimes serial killers can get to about like number 20 of their sex worker before they even start thinking of it as there's a serial killer around. Nobody
Yeah.
cares about sex workers enough to want to protect them. So decriminalization is very important. And I read this research paper where the writer tried to sort of um, merge the abolitionists, their ideologies and their rationale with those of us who say that all sex workers need this decriminalization. And she had this third solution where especially in cities or in towns that they are known to have brothels, maybe the grassroots thing to do is to start from like the young girls, because for a lot of them it's because they do not have any opportunities. That's why they end up leaving willingly to go to these brothels. So maybe if in those settings opportunities are presented to them as choices, not to force them, not to make it seem like I'm here to rescue you, then you just have a savior complex. But I don't present it to them as you have these choices, you have these opportunities that might give you a better chance at life than if you enter that brothel. Because for a lot of places like that too, they sort of tend to make the girls work their way out, because it's as if, oh, I'm giving you a place to sleep, I'm giving you food to eat, so now you work for me, you need to pay me off before you can leave. And that is one side of the exploitation. So which I think I really liked reading that paper. I saved it, but I do not remember what the title is or who wrote it, but it was extremely insightful, and I like that as a way to, make sex workers feel protected.
Yeah, I agree. I think that educating girls, educating women, presenting opportunities, all of that are ways to address the root causes of why women go into sex work in the first place. And if they go because they want to, then that's fine. All we want to do is we just want to eradicate the exploitation aspect of sex
Yes.
work, right? And
Yeah.
then there would also be things like women not, for example, female adult entertainers not being paid the same as male adult entertainers. I think that problems like this are because of the marriage between patriarchy and capitalism. I think that's the root cause of the problem. All right, my phone is about to die because it's about to be out of battery. So let's cap our conversation here. And yeah, thank you all for watching. I'm going to be rushing a bit. Thank you all for watching. And you can find us on all social media platforms at Unholy Feminists, as well as you can listen to our podcast on all podcast platforms, your favorite podcast platforms. Don't forget to like and share our episodes, and we will see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.